Everybody, welcome to Leon's Chainsaw Parts and Repair. Just spent the last hour and a half running the brush cutter trying to clean up our roads up here. So now it's time for some fun stuff. We are going to test two customer saws today, and if all that goes well, maybe I'll break out that 910 as well. First thing we're going to do is get Brian's 028 AV Super going. See if I finally got it tuned right. This is some Ponderosa pine, so it's not super hard, but it is dry. It's been cut for almost 2 years now. That is truly pathetic. The chain doesn't look that dull, but my God, it's not cutting for beans, so I'm going to run the file across it. Okay, well, this chain needs more than I can do here in the field. I'm not convinced that that file job helped a whole lot, but we will give it another shot. I think we can all agree it's not cutting right. And a lot of that is the chain. This doesn't have much torque. Been through this thing thoroughly. The crankcase has no leaks. It's been pressure and vacuum checked. Held vacuum for over an hour before I finally got tired of looking at it and released it. Fuel tank vent is new. Carburetor's been gone through. Fuel filter is free flowing and fine. New spark plug. Compression's 148 psi, basically 150. There's no reason in my mind that, I don't remember the exact specs on the 028, but I think it's around 50 cc's. It ought to be screaming through this. Now again, I'll have to put a grind on the chain and see again if that makes any difference, but given everything I've gone through, if there is still something mechanically wrong, there's either one of two possibilities. One, this model just has no damn torque, which is a little hard to believe, but maybe. Or two, there's something in that carburetor. I can tune it. You can get good high revs, but no matter where I back it off to, you just don't get that oomph when you kind of sink the spikes in and go. Now maybe it's all the chain. All I know is I'm going to shut down the camera and gas up a different saw, get all this junk out of the way. And we're going to do some test running with the Super XL-925 I just repaired for Hal. Okay, so this is Hal's 925. It's the one we went through a week or two ago, whatever it was. Had the bum piston. Carbon scoring had collapsed one of the lower ring landing. So I put the aftermarket 925 piston in there from Little Red Barn. Worked actually fairly well. Good compression, measuring... I believe I measured around 150, which is more than enough. I've bolted one of my spare bars I keep around for testing on there. It's got a 3/8 63 gauge chain. I don't know where I got the bar or what it originally came on, probably a Poulon or something, but it works perfect. It's got a real sharp grind on it. This chain is beat to hell, but I save it for stuff like this because I skidded these logs out back in early spring. So I'm going to hit mud. They're way too heavy for me to roll. Forgot my PV, and I'm not going boonie crashing looking for a stick that's strong enough to roll these. So I'm just going to try and be careful. Main point here is to give this a little more run time. It's had about 40 minutes on the bench, grand total of, idling and light revs. And today we're going to give it a little bit more, break it in so we can get it back to Hal. I've already hit some dirt. So that chain is starting to lose efficiency, but man, is this cutting good. Well, that can't possibly be a good sign. At all. Huh. Well, there's plenty of compression, but man, something just doesn't sound right. Warm, for sure. That's hot. Boiling the fuel. Okay, well. Yeah, the fact that it still has compression makes me feel alright, but the fact that it's hot enough to boil fuel does not. So, obviously this one gets shut down too. Love these days where we're batting 1,000. No, wait till I get home and get it on the bench. Okay, well I'm stubborn, so I decided to take a quick look at it. The good news is there's zero damage to the piston at all. The noise that we heard was the damn muffler coming loose. The Loctite didn't hold for whatever reason, so I've retorqued that after inspecting the muffler, richened both the low and the high up a little bit. This has the governor on it, but we're going to try running it some more and see if she was getting warm because there just wasn't enough fuel in the mix. But thankfully, again, running this AMSOIL, the exhaust side of that piston looks brand new. So let's see what happens. days that just aren't your day. That was a rock right there. Okay, let's try this one last time. Next time that chain dulls, I am done for the day. The guy can only put up with so much stump filing. was scary for a minute. The noise that muffler made as it was rattling loose really had me afraid of what was going to be behind that thing and on the piston, but detuning it a little bit, this is a great reminder. I was under the impression that these governed tillets and carbs wouldn't let you over rev it, but I can clearly see that's not true because I had it tuned too tight. It would rev up and it would cut like that, but it was getting too warm. That's why it was boiling the fuel. I think I dropped the maximum speed about 1,000 RPM. And again, that's just a guess. I didn't bring a tachometer with me, which I probably should have. But it's not boiling fuel. And it cut all the way through that, which means A, it's running good, and B, I finished, or I didn't hit any more damn rocks. So I feel a whole lot better than I did about 20 minutes ago. So I think I'm going to wrap this up for the day. To hell with the 910. I got sweat pouring down in my eyes. We'll play with it another day. So one of the pluses of where the Firewood Hill is located is it's about a 35 to 40 minute drive for me. So that gives me lots of time to cool down, relax, and think. So we looked at those two saws, the 028 Super. That one I'm still a little baffled on. I haven't run it across the grinder yet, but I'm going to do that and really true that chain up nicely. It's a Stihl chain, and it's done something really weird. I don't think I previously ground it, but it's got, where the tooth is right here, it's metal that has melted and almost rolled up. Kind of like when you take, I've done it before on chains, if you take too big of a bite with one of these grinders, it can get hot enough to kind of roll it like that, especially on, what would that be? Be on a left-hand cutter. These the older machines, this is much newer, but the old ones would run the motor in both directions in order to avoid those kind of burrs appearing. But of course, with modern safety regulations, they're not going to allow anything that's blasting sparks and small metal shards back at you. Maybe someday I'll rig this up so that I can run it in reverse. I don't know. Long and the short of it, if you're going to use a grinder, you should take, if you've got to take a lot of material off, going 2 or 3 times over is probably better than just one big trying to hog it, because you end up with that. But anyway, I do see some evidence of that on that chain. So I know that's not quite right. That's why it was throwing more sawdust than it was chips in that Ponderosa. But the lack of torque is still bothering me a little bit. So having tested everything, I went through it earlier in the video, the crankcase pressure and vacuum test passed with flying colors. I've been through the carb, but really that's the only thing left that could possibly explain what's going on. So I'm not sure. Now Hal's 925, that was something completely different, and I do have a couple thoughts on what was going on. I definitely had it turning probably too high. I'm pretty certain of that. Not having a tachometer, I'm going to take a wild guess and say that I had that thing spinning somewhere up around 11,500 RPM, which is around 1,000 too high. Again, my ears says when I retuned it, backed it off, that it was roughly 1,000 RPM, and to the best of my recollection, no load speed shouldn't exceed 10.5 on one of those. So that was definitely part of why she warmed up there. The muffler rattling loose, we've all seen it happen on a saw. I mean, if you've run a saw long enough, it's going to happen. Again, I put Loctite on it, so I'm a little baffled on that. There must have still been some oil on the threads that I didn't get cleaned up. But to have it get hot and the muffler rattle off, for somebody like me who's working on these saws, I just put a piston in the thing, and my mind immediately went to the darkest possible place of, oh crap, something went wrong with that new piston. This whole thing is shot. Well, when you see me pull it over and go, oh, still got compression, that's a good sign. That's when I kind of started wondering, alright, what is going on? So off camera, pulled the muffler, and it was hot. I mean, even wearing my leather work gloves, I couldn't hold on to that muffler for very long. But the side of that piston still, it looks brand new. I mean, it's a new piston, but it's got, at that point, should have roughly an hour of runtime on it. Still look brand new. So I breathed a big sigh of relief there. I mean, it was turning over smoothly. Went, okay. It's not the end of the world if you boil fuel. Typically, that's a sign that you've got an air restriction. And most of these saws are designed where the fuel tank kind of bolts to the crankcase, and you end up with an air gap of anywhere from 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. It's really common for those air gaps to fill up with oily sawdust, and I've had a number of Super XLs do that, and you get that boiling fuel where you open the cap and you can see it bubbling. In this case, I could actually hear it, and if you listen closely, you can hear it when the saw is turned off. So it's not the end of the world if that happens. It doesn't mean that it's overheated to the point where the saw has died, damaged crank seals, all of that. In theory, yes, that could be in conjunction with all of that, but I made the mistake of assuming the worst, and thankfully that wasn't the case. You can see if we came back after retuning it, getting the muffler tightened down, it finished out the day cutting more wood than it had previously cut with no hiccups whatsoever. But the one other thing, and I should have grabbed the saw before starting this video, on those 925s, the starter, I don't have anything to demonstrate here, nothing hanging around, but the starter has that kind of chrome screen that goes around it. That's in lieu of a flywheel screen. The old Super XLs, the Super EZs, they had a screen that screwed right over the starter pawls onto the flywheel, and that was so you couldn't get branches and crap sucked up in there and jammed into the fins of the flywheel, which could cause all kinds of damage. On the 925, instead of putting that screen on the flywheel, they wrapped it around the starter cover, so it looks a lot like, I said Super EZs, I shouldn't have. They have that same chrome screen that is around there. It's just held in place with a rivet on each end. I have one in the middle. But irrelevant. The purpose of that screen is to restrict that debris from going in there. If you've ever set one of those saws down while it's running in a pile of sawdust, you're going to pick it up and see that half that screen is clogged with sawdust and wood chips. Well, there was a couple times that I didn't think about it at the time, but driving home I went, wait a minute, I had to brush that crap off several times, and when I shut the saw down, or as the muffler was coming off and we had all the boiling fuel issues, there was a bunch of sawdust on that screen as well. So I think there was a multitude of issues there that really led to what was going on. So I guess the moral of the story is, even if you've worked on saws for a long time, or worked on a lot of them, you can still get caught up in the moment, and I certainly did, and assume the worst, and thankfully that's not the case. So Brian, your 028 is still a work in progress. I'm not happy with it yet. I don't feel that it's doing what it should. Hal, I'm going to say your Super XL-925 piston project and all of that is a complete success, and that saw is ready to pick up whenever you're ready.